Imagine this, a world where oil, which is the fuel that built our modern lives, no longer dominates. The cars still drive, planes still fly, and cities still glitter with lights. But the lifeblood of the 20th century, the black gold that powered it all, has started to lose its grip. What happens when oil demand peaks? What happens when it begins to decline? And what happens to the countries, economies, and people whose entire lives have been tied to it? That's the story we're unpacking today. Before we begin, if you enjoyed these long-form explorations into the forces shaping our world, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep creating more content like this for you all. Let's start with a truth that surprises many people. The world isn't about to run out of oil. In fact, there's still plenty left underground. What we're really running out of is demand. And that is a much bigger shift than most people even realize.
There are more than 1.1 million producing oil and gas wells in the United States today. On average, more than 9 million barrels of oil are produced per day.
Shipping companies are building bigger tankers than ever before to transport the energy and resources our world needs.
In a region once branded the Sea of Death, engineers have driven drills deeper than almost anywhere on Earth, striking oil and gas where few dared to search.
For over a century, oil has been the foundation of our modern economy. It powers our transport, heats our homes, and forms the base for plastics, chemicals, and even fertilizers. But oil's story isn't just about energy. It's about geopolitics, wealth, and power. Whoever controlled oil often controlled the world. So take the 20th centuries. Wars were fought over oil, alliances were built on it, and fortunes were made from it. Countries in the Middle East went from desert economies to global powerhouses almost overnight. Oil wasn't just fuel, it was destiny.
After hours of intense discussion and negotiation, the OPEC ministers reached agreement in November to reduce oil production.
But fast forward to today, and the story is shifting. According to the International Energy Agency, global demand for oil is expected to peak within the next decade. Some say by 2030, others say it might take longer. But the trend is clear. At some point, the curve flattens and begins to decline. Now, you may ask why. So there are three big reasons: technology, policy, and climate change. First, let's talk about technology. Electric cars are growing at record speed. Battery storage is improving. Renewables like solar and wind are cheaper than fossil fuels in many parts of the world. So that means every single year, oil's dominance gets chipped away. And there is a lot of push on buying electric cars.
Against a dusty desert backdrop, row after row of solar panels shimmer, drawing energy from the sun's rays.
This is the largest crop of offshore wind turbines in the world, known as the Hornsey Wind Farm.
Now let's talk about the second reason: policy. Governments worldwide are setting deadlines to phase out gasoline cars, cut emissions, and shift to clean energy. The EU, the US, China, they're all pushing harder than ever. And when governments move and make these moves, the markets follow, because they have to.
It's a voluntary framework that gives countries certain greenhouse gas emission reduction targets to keep global temperatures from rising too high.
The concentration of carbon in our atmosphere, the measure that greatly determines global temperature.
Organizers of today's global climate strike are still tallying the number of people who took to the streets around the country and the world. Estimates are well into the millions.
Third reason is climate change. Oil is one of the biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. And as climate disasters become more frequent, like floods, fires, heat waves, the pressure to move away from fossil fuels is no longer just political. It's a matter of survival.
Tonight, the massive wildfire burning west of Yosemite since Tuesday is now more than 21 square miles and still out of control.
The land of sand has become a world of water. At Dubai airport, planes ploughed through floods.
Now this brings us to the real question. What happens to the countries that depend and make their money on oil? Let's not sugarcoat it. This is an existential challenge. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Nigeria, and Venezuela. These economies rely heavily on oil exports for government revenue. Even countries with more diversified economies like the UAE still feel the oil's weight on their shoulders. When demand peaks, prices start falling, and when prices fall, those government budgets collapse. We saw a taste of this in 2014 when oil prices crashed, economies slowed down, deficits grew, and countries that were once booming suddenly felt fragile.
Oil price fluctuation is always regarded as the barometer of worldwide economy, whose change would be the hot issue to be concerned and discussed generally in political and economic circles in every country. To the basic factors that decide the international oil price, some experts believe it lies mainly in the supply and demand. But behind the international oil price fluctuation existed not only the constantly self-adjust between supply and demand on the world crude oil market.
History gives us a clear warning. Venezuela had the largest oil reserves in the world. But when prices collapsed and the country hadn't built other industries to diversify with, the economy imploded. Inflation skyrocketed, millions fled, and the once rich oil state was left in ruins. Oil wealth without diversification can quickly turn into a trap.
Clouds of tear gas, protesters throwing stones, a situation that appears to be spiraling out of control.
Worried customers have been snapping up everything in sight. Store shelves nationwide are dwindling or totally empty.
As if Lebanon didn't have enough problems already, along comes another. Petrol shortage.
So how are countries preparing for this? Some are moving fast. Take Norway, for example. Turned its oil wealth into the world's largest sovereign wealth fund, essentially a savings account for future generations. Today, that fund is worth over $1 trillion and helps cushion Norway from oil's up and downs. Now, in the Middle East, take Saudi Arabia, they have launched Vision 2030, aiming to diversify into stuff like tourism, entertainment, and technology. The UAE has invested in stuff like finance, trade, renewables, as well as tourism, turning Dubai into a hub that isn't reliable on oil in the same way as it used to be. These are steps in the right direction, but the clock is ticking.
Norway is a rich country. It has $1 trillion in the bank, so to say. That money was made from the country's vast oil reserves, and Norway's sovereign wealth fund has become one of the largest single investors around the world.
Welcome to Saudi Arabia, the land where every second goes like this.
At first glance, Master City shimmers like a mirage, a modern metropolis rising from the desert sands. It's 17 kilometers southeast of Abu Dhabi, an ambitious endeavor that spans some 640 hectares and aims to be the world's most sustainable eco-city.
Now, the other side of this story is opportunity. Oil-rich countries have some of the best natural conditions for renewables. So think about it. The Gulf has year-round sunshine for solar, strong coastal winds for turbines, and massive investment capacity from decades of oil revenue. So if they harness this properly, they could transform from oil exporters to green energy exporters.
All major plant equipment has been installed and is in place. Our storage tanks, our cold boxes, compression, electrolyzers, and behind me you see our rectifiers and PDC equipment ready for use. soon as commissioning completes.
But this transition won't be smooth. Millions of jobs are tied to oil industry, directly and indirectly. Subsidies for fuel, electricity, and even food in some countries are funded by oil revenues. So if that income completely disappears, governments will face hard choices to make. And with economic pressure often comes political instability.
There's never any normal here. What we provide with them is they can come home from work and get fed and then sleep and get ready for work again.
What began as a demonstration outside Parliament last week turned into a violent and brutal clash between police and protesters.
Now let's imagine the long-term future. What happens when oil isn't the world's most important resource? Cities may look completely different, designed around electric transport and renewable energy grids. Economies may look completely different, powered by industries we haven't fully developed yet, like hydrogen, AI-driven logistics, or even space industries. But geopolitics will look different as well. Wars over oil may give way to competition over stuff like rare earth minerals like lithium or even water.
Right now, the supply chain for these minerals spans the globe. Australia mines 48% of the world's lithium, and Indonesia extracts 50% of global nickel. Once mined, a majority of both are sent to China, along with other battery metals for processing.
In-space manufacturing may sound like science fiction, but it's happening already, albeit on a very small scale.
And here's the paradox. Oil will still be around. Planes will still need jet fuel. Plastics will still require petrochemicals. But the difference is the scale of usability. Oil will move from being the backbone of the global economy to being one piece of it. So it's less dominant and less powerful.
Chinese state oil giant Sinopec has recently completed construction on the country's largest and most intelligent petrochemical industrial base.
The amount of fuel required to fuel an aircraft depends on its size and destination. Sometimes 2 fuel carts are used to fuel bigger airplanes.
Its global production has doubled about every decade. Crude oil, the primary raw material for plastic, is extracted through a process called drilling. It involves drilling a well bore into the Earth's crust to reach underground reservoirs that contain oil.
Personally, I see the future of oil as both a challenge and an opportunity for countries. The challenge is obvious. For countries built on oil money, the end of the oil age is like standing on a cliff edge. But the opportunity, on the other hand, is just as big. To build new industries, new technologies, and new ways of life that don't depend on one single source. History shows us that the countries that adapt survive. So the ones that cling to the past often don't, and I've given you examples in here. So here's the big question for you. What do you think happens when oil finally loses its crown? Will countries successfully reinvent themselves, or will some fall into this crisis? I want to hear from you guys, so drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and join my YouTube members only group for more deep dives and behind the scenes Q&As and so much more. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one.